recent, they could have done it 3 years ago, and that's their most recent.
Well, we should, I was just thinking about that, we probably should say the copy of the most recently to make sure we get, at least get one, and then, end an extension for the current if one has not been filed yet, something along those lines, is what I would suggest.
The other question along with that is that do you want the finance committee, the finance committee has offered to do these reviews. So we would run it through staff, finance committee, council as far as approval process. Is that satisfactory to the council?
Did the finance committee look
They
at
didn't do this one. They didn't do
which
this
were,
one.
okay, for us to decide what to do, yeah. Well, I think that was always helpful in the past when the finance committee reviewed it before we got it. Because that way they would have anything they might have gone over to catch or questions that we might not have thought of.
And we had, talked about different methods of this review and the review being done potentially by the town clerk and so forth. After having reviewed one, I suggested that financial individuals need to be reviewing these packages because so much is financial related. And, there are a lot of things that, non-financial people will need to know to look for. And there are a lot of things that all of you would need to know to look for in reviewing this. That's something that I would review as a second nature to me. So I do think it needs to be a more formalized financial review.
So should, as an example, should you look at them and then go to the finance committee? Once you look at it, see that all the documents are there, or what are you?
I think we can still have probably the town clerk or myself look at it to make sure all the documents are there, then send it to finance committee, and finance and myself could review it and discuss it at the next finance committee meeting, and then present our findings to council. We could compile our notes on the review, all of the notes, into one document for council to then review. And then it's a question also whether council wants the entire package. I'm assuming that at least some individuals, if not all, would want the complete package.
I want to see everything.
So what do you want from us tonight?
A recommended procedure and policy.
It is the recommended procedure that we've offered, which is staff gets it, reviews it, goes to finance committee with it, and then brings it on to you, acceptable. And then along with that, some of the recommended changes that they made is that, and other recommended changes to the application process that would kick in for the next fiscal year. We can't really do anything about what we've already asked for this year, but we can kick it in for next year for anyone else. Once you've done that, then it would be, what do you want to do about specifically this particular application? There's two different, at least two different.
And then the other is the audit question. We've thrown this back and forth whether we're going to require that anybody that requests funding get an audit. And I think that's,
We decided to do that.
in light of recent events, I think we had discussed it. I don't know that it was definitely decided. It's recommended.
There was also some discussion about having a threshold amount for a different style of review, but I'm not sure if that ever went anywhere. That if it was above 500 or something, that it was a higher level of review than it was under 500. I'm not sure if it went anywhere with that.
It was a matter of the second year, because the first year was going to have to be an intense one, and then it was going to be the second year was going to be a smaller review for the less than 500. So the first year, they're all going to be the same, because we still needed all the initial documents when they were formed and so forth.
Seems like that would be the proper chain of command, is to review everything just like, you discussed with all the changes that was made in it. And you say we'd have to implement this for the next fiscal year. This fiscal year has already been approved, correct?
Well, we gave them a checklist and they provided what we asked. So if we're, you know, it's my recommendation that you don't go backwards and say, well, in order to get this money that we said if you provide these documents and they're in order to give, now you need to go back and do something else or give us other documents. Some of these we can request and they're easy for them to provide, like financial statements or so forth. But we can't go backwards and say we're gonna require that you get an audit after the fact. That is something that I would suggest we do for next year though. So change the request process for next year, the checklist for next year's requests. And then ask for anything else that you want to ask for the current one.
So you're saying just the three, kids voting, and did you see the two others?
Senior resources and Piedmont Triad Partnership.
Okay, so those are the only three that we had,
Yes.
and you've already given them the criteria, so you're not gonna change it, and we won't get any more.
Right, there will be no more for this fiscal year, because the cutoff was before the fiscal year
For
started.
the fiscal year started. Okay. Well, I agree with your recommendations, and I agree to the suggestion that you and the finance committee review the documents before you send it on to council, but I'd like council to get the whole package, rather than just the recommendations. And I think we did discuss an audit, because if my memory serves me correctly, someone said, and I can't remember who it was, that if we require an audit, it would cut down on requests from a lot of organizations.
It's likely, because there are a lot of organizations that do not get audits, a lot of nonprofits.
So I'm pretty sure we discussed requiring an audit.
We discussed it, it just wasn't official.
What is-
So you had a motion.
Daniel, what does an audit cost? What would an audit cost, whether we're dealing with kids voting or Piedmont Triad Partnership? Throw out just a wild figure.
Well, you have to think ours is upwards of, what, $9,000 for a municipality. Of course, they're looking at more, but, you know, a small nonprofit could be somewhere around $5,000, upwards to $8,000 or $9,000. For a smaller one, the larger ones could be more. It depends on the size and the volume of information they're looking at. But we're not talking $1,000, you're talking, you know, $5,000, $4,000 or $5,000 potentially for a small nonprofit. Because they have to look at internal controls as well as the financial data. And they're reviewing the entire organization and the structure.
A particular note too, in their package, they presented only 7% of their income they spent on private fundraising. So they have not really done very much as far as private fundraising.
And that was probably a mailing they sent in last week for funds. Because, I mean, I don't know what specific else they do, they probably do some advertising.
I know something about nonprofit audits. It doesn't have to cost that much, and sometimes nonprofits don't have them done every year. You can have nonprofit audit financials.
There's a review like you mentioned a while ago. What is that? What's the difference?
They're not looking at as much information as an auditor is. Completely detailed, looking at all the data, looking at the details and so forth. The review is not as comprehensive as an audit. And a compilation is another step down. A compilation is where they just compare pretty much the financial statements and they're not looking at anything. Now, you know, as a CPA, anything that comes to your attention, you are expected to deal with. But we're not in there to detect fraud, and it's not our responsibility to detect fraud. Now, with an audit, you are stating that you've looked at the internal controls and the procedures and whether they, the likelihood that they would detect fraud. But you are not required to, and that's not why we're there doing an audit. So, there are 3 levels. Compilation just puts together financials, doesn't look at anything. And then you go to the review, review procedures and so forth, and then you've got the audit, which is a detailed examination.
If we're required, as an example, and not knowing how any of these